Welcome back to OTR. It's time now for our political roundtable. And joining me at the table, as you can see this morning, Democratic analyst Marianne Marsh, Republican analyst Jenny Buckingham. It's great to see you guys. So here we sit with the. We'll start with the federal government shutdown, and that's where we sit right now. Congress has failed to reach a deal on funding last week. Democrats argue that health care tax credits through the Affordable Care Act, they need to be extended, and Republicans say that those negotiations can happen after the government is funded. So, Ginny, let me start with you. Who is winning right now the PR battle?
President Trump, and that can't be what the Democrats wanted this to turn out to be. He is relishing this opportunity to make Congress even less relevant than they've been for the last year, and he's going to push his power even farther. That's what they wanted. That's why they shut down the government.
Do you agree with her?
Facts are stubborn things. The Washington Post poll put out this week shows that the American voters think it's Donald Trump and the Republicans who they blame for the shutdown by 17 points, not even close. So it's clear where voters are going to place their blame, and it's on Donald Trump and the Republicans. The irony of all this is Democrats are trying to save people's health care. 20 million people. Premiums who will lose their health care. Premiums will go up 75%. And let's remember, Donald Trump has been talking about giving us a health care plan in 2 weeks for the last 10 years. He's not going to give anyone health care. He's dismantling it. When you add to the fact that he's taking research money away from institutions, NIH, colleges, universities who are trying to cure cancer and other things, he has no interest in it. He just wants to harm people, and that's what he's doing.
We just talked about that earlier on OTR this morning, taking the monies away. So the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, says that there will be layoffs instead of furloughs. So let's start with that. What's your reaction to that, Jenny? I mean, layoffs instead of furloughs it's serious, period. It's serious again.
Well, I don't think that voters are going to rise up in protest of making the federal government smaller if that's what ends up happening. So I don't think that's a winning issue for Democrats either. What I don't see is an off-ramp for anybody in this. The Republicans say they'll negotiate if the government reopens. Mm-hmm. What are Democrats saying to that? No, we refuse. We're going to hold our ball and go home. There has to be some grown-ups in the room that say, okay, let's get the government open and then we'll deal with some of these issues that are being
Well, the Republicans
discussed.
have refused to negotiate. They've refused to sit down. They won't negotiate. Democrats are holding their feet to the fire. But I think the big two things. One, this shutdown could put us in a recession. We are teetering on it right now. Notice that no employment information, economic information, any of the monthly reports have been released because they know they're going bad. We had the best economy in the world just back in January. And now we're teetering on that. If you lay off people instead of furlough them, that's what will happen. And number two, the only way to look at what Donald Trump is doing, not only with this shutdown, but everything else, the military, colleges and education, go down the list. Mm-hmm. He is trying to destroy the United States of America and the people who live here. That is the only way to look at this and the only way to make any sense of it, because none of it makes any sense otherwise.
Speaking of the president suggested to a gathering of military leaders that the armed forces be trained in U.S. cities. The president did not specifically mention Boston, but did list a handful of other U.S. cities that he considers dangerous. Listen.
I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military.
Cities he listed Chicago. He listed San Francisco and New York. But Governor Maura Healey called the president's comments another example of political theory. Marianne, what's your takeaway from the military leader?
Well, it's clear. Speaking of destroying things, Donald Trump is trying to turn the United States of America into a police state and use the military against American citizens, to use ICE, the National Guard, police forces to turn this country into a police state. That has never happened in this country. And in addition to that, it wants to be a surveillance state. So the Doge people took all of our information. Now they're going to put cameras up everywhere. Every move in your life, physically, financially, all of it is under examination. So this is what happened in Germany. You have J.D. Vance out there saying, snitch on your neighbors. If you think they're undocumented, turn them in. The last time we heard that was in Germany with Jews. Turn in the Jewish people. That's what this country has become in 10 months. And that should concern everybody.
Jenny.
I think Governor Healey has it right that this is theater, and we know President Trump says things that he doesn't mean, and often he says it to get the kind of reaction that he just got from Marianne. I thought that meeting with the military was not necessary. I think Pete Hegseth is the first guy that ought to go. Like he is not the right leader for our military. But I do not think that we are turning into Germany. No one does who actually remembers what that was really like.
Go back to the beginning of Donald Trump's political career, 10 years ago, when he would say at his rallies, rough that guy up. You're arresting him. Don't be nice to him. Police officers, when you put somebody in the back of your cruiser, don't put your hand on their head. Let them hit their head. He has been stoking violence since he went down the escalator and arrived on the scene in this country. And that has been escalating along. Political violence has increased. Violence again. Look at the ICE agents body slamming people to the ground and hitting them and beating them with batons. That's not happened in this country in decades and decades and decades. You put this all together and there's no other way to look at it. This isn't a democracy.
Next item, turning to Congressman Seth Moulton's possible Senate run. He hasn't officially said if he's going to challenge Senator Ed Markey, but if he does, that would open up the 6th congressional seat. So, Ginny, let me start with you. It's rare for a seat to be vacant. How many people do you think would jump in for a seat?
So I live in that district, and I haven't met a person not running if Seth Moulton doesn't run. It's a big opportunity. Every Democrat who looks in the mirror sees the next congressman, and they're probably going to jump in. There are a few Republicans that could get in. Bruce Tarr lives in the district.
You're not going to throw your hat in the ring? I would just.
No, thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Marianne, what do you think? I mean, if he does run, it would open up a seat.
Yeah, there are a number of people, but largely a couple of legislators, Nguyen, the state rep, State Senator Creighton is looking at it, former state rep Belcito, who ran against Moulton in 2020 and lost, and then the mayor of Lynn. So, I mean, those are, I would say, of all the names being bandied about, those are probably the 3 or 4 to look at to see if they get in and they're credible.
Is Seth Moulton going to challenge Senator Markey?
No question about it.
I think so. Why
we
not?
got 2 yeses
He's
here. We
vulnerable.
agree on that.
He's vulnerable.
Best and worst is next.